Okay, what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to use the knowledge we've learned about the while loop to create a guessing game where the user has to guess a number between 1 and 5. If they guess the correct number, what happens is we just make them guess again. Okay, so just to give the answer, I've hard coded this to be 2. So if the user was to enter the number 2, press OK, we get congrats, you won, and then the game is over, okay, and you won. Okay, so how I coded this up, I'll talk you through the code and then we'll write it out again together is, I've created this variable user wins and assigned it the value of false. We want to keep track of whether the user has won the game or not, okay? So basically, while the user has not won, we're going to keep the game running. And then what I did was I just created a variable called correct number and I assigned that the value of 2. So I haven't used mat.random or anything like that to, I suppose you could say, dynamically generate a number. The key point of this tutorial is, now that we've learned the while loop, we're going to apply it in a relatively basic way. So later on in this course, we can actually make a more interesting guessing game where we use mat.random to generate a random number, and then the user has to guess that number. So now we enter the while loop. And remember, the while loop runs while some condition evaluates to true, okay? Now I've set user wins, that variable, I've assigned it the value of false. So the while loop is going to run while user wins is not equal to true. And remember, false is not equal to true, so that evaluates to true, therefore we enter the while loop. Then what happens is, I just use prompt, I prompt the user, and I give them instructions, just this string. I say guess a number between 1 and 5, okay? Then what I do is I just basically convert that to type number, just want to make sure that when they enter a number on their keyboard, it is converted to the number type, okay? And then all I do is essentially I just store that inside of user guess. Then what I do is I do an if statement to check to see if the user guess was the same as the correct number. So for example, if they were to guess the correct number, what happens is we enter the if statement, user wins has now been assigned the value of true, we alert out congrats you won, and then we just alert out the game is now over. We don't really need to say you won again, so the game is over. That makes more sense. And then what happens is we don't enter the loop again, because remember, we enter the loop when user wins is not equal to true, okay? But if the user guesses the right number, we then update the value of user wins. So therefore, once the user guesses the right game, we're going to have true is not equal to true. Well, that's false, right? Because true is equal to true. Therefore, we don't enter the while loop, okay? Probably make a bit more sense if we code this out together. So let's do that from scratch. Let me just have a sup of tea before we begin to code. Okay, awesome. So, like I say, we want to keep track of whether the user has won the game or not. So we can say let user wins and assign that the value of false. How can they start off the game having won it? They can't. So when the game starts, the user has not yet won. So we can say user wins is assigned a value of false. Then what we can do is we can just say let correct number be equal to, and you can hard code that to be a number between 1 and 5. I'll just say the number 2. Then we have our while loop. So we want to say while user wins is not equal to true, we want to enter the while loop. So our entire game is going to be inside of the while loop. So we know what we need to do is we need to prompt the user to enter a number between 1 and 5. So we can say, please enter a number between 1 and 5. Maybe create a bit of space there. Semicolon to end the statement. And then what I want to do is I want to wrap all of that inside of number and just make sure that we convert that type to number, okay? And that was supposed to be a semicolon at the end there, okay? Now, we've prompted the user, whatever number they type in, we've converted the type number. What we need to do then is then store that inside of a variable. So I will say let user guess be assigned the value of whatever it is the user has guessed, okay? Then we need to do a check to see if the user has guessed the correct number or not. And we know how we can do that. We can use the if statement. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say if user guess, okay, the user has guessed the correct number is strictly equal to correct number, what do we want to do? Okay, well, what we want to do is we want to assign the user wins variable the value of true, because we'll have to end our game. So user wins is now being assigned a value of true. Okay, remember at the start of the game user wins is value false, but if they guess the correct number, we want to just update that user wins to be true. Okay, then we want to let the user know that they've won, so we can just say alert, something like congrats you won, congrats you won. Okay, and then if the user hasn't guessed correctly else, okay, remember we only enter the if code block if that condition evaluates to true. So we'll only enter this code block here, right, if the user has guessed correctly. If the user doesn't guess the correct number, we just come to the else block. So they haven't guessed the number correctly. We haven't changed the value of user wins. We just want to basically alert out guess again because they still haven't guessed the right number. So just say guess again, semicolon to end the statement. And then after the entire while loop is run, the game is over, we can just alert out game over. Okay? So let's save and refresh, see this in action. Guess number between 1 and 5. So if I say 4, guess again. If I say 5, guess again. But if I say the number 2, congrats, you won. And then the game is over. Okay, awesome. So guys, just to quickly recap, we created a very basic guessing game using the while loop in JavaScript. What we did here was we basically created a variable to keep track of whether the user had won the game or not. Okay, we initialize or start that variable to have a Boolean value of false. We assign it a Boolean value of false because remember, when the game starts, the user hasn't won yet, they haven't placed a guess. Then we do our while loop, we check our condition, while user wins is not equal to true. Basically, while false is not equal to true, we enter the loop. We basically prompt the user to enter a guess. We convert it to data type number. We store it in the variable user guess. Then we use the if statement to check to see if the user has guessed the correct number. If they have, you shouldn't only just alert out congrats you won. You need to make sure we don't enter the while loop again. So all you need to do is just update the value of user wins and assign it a value of true. Remember, you don't need to use the let keyword here. The variable has already been declared for the first time there. So all you need to do is just update the value of that Boolean variable user wins. Okay? And then alert out to the user. And the reason the game ends if the user has guessed correctly is because user wins now is a value of true. The next time we check the while condition to see if all of this evaluates to true, we're testing now to see if true is not equal to true. Well, you know, that's false. True not equal to true. They are equal to each other. Therefore, that evaluates to false. We don't enter the loop. So what happens is we continue on executing the code after the while loop, such as this alert here. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I'll see you in the next one. And also as well, feel free to try use mat.random to generate a random number. And after the computer has done that, then do a while loop to check to see if you can guess the right number. Maybe a challenge is get the computer to generate a random number between 1 and 3. Okay, that's awesome. I'll see you in the next tutorial for more JavaScript learning.